Hello everyone. In this lesson, I want to talk about how we can launch our website live relatively soon. What I mean is I know that personally, I don't want to take real payments from real users anytime soon, but I do want to launch my website up onto the public web so I can let my friends, family, coworkers, so on and so forth use it. And I'm okay if they cost me 5 or 10 cents a day in replicate credits. Right? And they can just use the app in its current state where they buy fake credits using a fake credit card, so on and so forth. But I don't want malicious users to take advantage of the app while it's live and, use all of my replicate credits. Like, even if I put in $100, they would use it instantly. So in this lesson, I want to show you how we can sort of have the best of both worlds. You can launch your app without needing to, have Paddle verify your business, verify your domain. Maybe you'd want to start an LLC or some sort of business entity before you actually start taking real payments. There's just so many non-coding or non-programming details that go into actually running a business and taking real payments that I know I'm not ready for that anytime soon. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to leave my app in sandbox mode in terms of Paddle, but what I'm going to do is implement a global, maybe like 30 critters a day limit. So no matter how many users are signed up for the website, the app as a whole can only create 30 critters a day, which would cost me like 10 cents a day in replicate credits. And then after that, the app shuts down its ability to create new critters until the next day starts. That way, we can launch it, we can have our friends, family, and coworkers use it, but we don't have to worry about creating a huge bill for us in terms of replicate credits because malicious users won't be able to use up too many. Then in the future, if you ever actually do want to go live with a business idea and you actually do want to start an LLC and get Paddle to verify your business plan, right, and your identity and all of that, you'll be very close to just flipping that switch and using Paddle instead of Paddle Sandbox. But I think this is a nice compromise so that we can actually go live, because the funnest part of building something like this when you're new to this industry is letting the people you care about actually try it and use it. I think you're going to get a lot of satisfaction out of having someone you know and care about create a critter through your application. Anyways, let me walk through how I'm going to set up my 30 critters per day logic. It all starts with the database. So in our critters table, I want to add a new column to this table that saves the date and time that the critter was created. That way, it'll be really easy to count how many were created in the last day and then shut it down if necessary. So to make that happen, here's the prompt I would write. In create critter.php, modify the code that creates the critters table if it doesn't exist so that it has a column called date that stores the date time. And just to make sure that it doesn't get confused and only store the day and not the time as well, I'll say so that it has a column called date time that stores the date time. That stores the date time the critter was created. Also give me copy and pastable PHP that I can run that will update my existing critters table to have that column. Cool. Let's go ahead and press enter and see what that gives us. Okay, it looks like my agent finished, but that only runs if the table doesn't already exist. So then it also, in the chat area, gave me this little bit of code. I would just copy that into my clipboard and then go into index.php and just add it temporarily. So up at the very top, maybe just below the opening PHP tag, I'll just paste in my clipboard. We don't need the extra opening PHP or this closing PHP. So I'll just save that, refresh the home page. Looks like we got an error message, but let me go refresh my database and see if that added that column. So I'll refresh the critters table. So yes, I should have paid more attention to that error. It did not add that column. Let's see. Cannot add a column with a non-constant default. I'm just going to give this error to the agent. So I'll say, I tried to run your copy and pastable code, but I got this error. Please adjust the copy pastable code so that all existing critter rows receive a date time of January 1st, 2025. I believe the error is that it's trying to use a constant value instead of just giving it like a fake value. So let's press enter and see what that gives us. I'm pretty sure this new code should work perfectly. The issue is that we have all sorts of critter rows, but they don't know what their value should be. So I'm just going to hard code it to January 1st. But once this code is in place, then any critters we create in the future should have the actual current date. So I'll just take this new code that it gave me and in index.php, just replace that code that it had before. Get rid of this opening PHP and closing PHP. Let's save that. Let's refresh the home page. It looks like that worked perfectly. So now if I refresh my database, yep, we have a new column, date, time. Now before we forget, let's tell the agent that when you actually create a critter, be sure to give it, like if I was going to create a new critter right now, we should give it the current date and time. So I'll say, perfect. Now in create critter.php, when you create a new critter and add its row to the critters table, be sure you give it the actual current date time. Let's go ahead and press enter and see what that gives us. While you're at it, while you're waiting on your agent, definitely be sure to remove that one-time database altering code in index.php that I just added. So I'll remove that, and then I'll save index.php, and I'll wait for my agent to finish on that change to create critter. Okay, so it looks like my agent finished. Let me test it out. So I'll go create a critter. I'll just use the random options. There is a tiger singing in an igloo, and if I refresh my database table, down at the very bottom should be the newest critter, and yes, you can see it, instead of using January 1st, it actually has the current date and time. So now, everything is in place. We are ready to write the code so that you can only create globally, like not on a user account level, but just our entire app. It can only create maybe 30 critters a day, and then it shuts down the ability until the next day. So let's say this. Perfect. In create critter.php, add a site-wide global 30 critters per day creation limit. So before you display the create critter form or accept any incoming post requests, count how many critters in the critters table have been created in the last 24 hours. Or instead of in the last 24 hours, let's say have been created in the current day. If 30 have been created in the current day, don't let any new critters be created until the next day. Instead of the create critter form, you could have a message that says critter limit reached for the day. Please come back tomorrow. And then finally, I do want to tell it to have that number that we chose. So I chose 30. I'm going to tell it to set that as a variable so that it's not in multiple places throughout the script. So that if that way we want to change it to like 5 or 10 or 20, we only have to change it in one place. So I'll say finally, that limit I chose of 30, make sure that is stored in a variable so that if I want to change it to 20, I only have to change it in one place in the code. Okay, let's go ahead and press enter and see what that gives us. Okay, it looks like my agent finished. Now to test this, let me refresh the create critter screen. And I know that I only have one critter in my database that has the current date for today. So to test this, I don't want to have to waste 30 credits. So what I would do is just go into that new file that it gave us, or excuse me, not the new file, create critter, the new code that it gave us. And somewhere towards the top, if you press Command or Control F, if you search for the value of 30, because that's what we set it to, I'm going to click keep the code. But this daily critter limit, I mean, yours probably won't have the exact same variable name, but if we just change this to like 3 and hit save, and now we can test this by just creating maybe 2 more critters, because I know I have one critter in my database from today's date. So let me create a second critter with today's date. There it is. Let me create one more critter with today's date. Aha, so that was just a huge bug in the code. So it didn't create that third critter. That should have gone through, but it didn't create the new image. Now you can see there's like a missing image in this grid of 8 images. And if I look in my database table, refresh and scroll all the way down to the bottom, notice this newest image, I think it was supposed to be a blue frog, its image value is null or empty. So what I would do is delete that newest row that's missing an image value. Now, again, you might not be running into this issue, but if you do run into a similar issue, I'm just explaining my thought process. But I would delete that newest row in the database. So I'd say delete record. Be sure to click write changes up towards the top. Okay, now if you refresh, that should fix the missing image in the grid. And now I would just want to test that behavior again to see if it does the exact same thing and has the exact same problem. So I'll create critter. This is supposed to be a fuzzy moose waves hello. Wow, well, he's missing an arm. But so it worked. I'm thinking the issue was that I was creating too many images too quickly, and so the replicate service maybe blocked it or saw it as spam. For some reason, the request failed. So there's actually not a bug with my code, but right away, let me archive that moose. His arm is missing, and that's just, it needs to be archived. Whoops, I meant to click archive, but I clicked remix. But perfect, yeah, I've created 3 critters, so now I have my daily limit. But let me go back and archive that moose. But yeah, now if I try to click create critter, I can't. So this is great. Now, I mean, you could add more robust logic to create critters so that if a request to replicate fails, triple check that we're not removing a credit, so on and so forth. But in this lesson, let's stay focused on the daily critter limit. So my idea here, if you can put that back to maybe like 30, is that I know it only costs 1/3 of a cent to create a critter. So this would cost me about 10 cents a day in replicate credits. So that way I could leave my website up online and know that my friends and family and coworkers could try to use it. But malicious users are not going to drain my replicate account. If I put like $5 on there, they're not going to drain it instantly. But yeah, now that I put it back up to 30 critters a day, I could create a new one. You get the idea. That is going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we're going to take care of a few miscellaneous details. And after we get those sorted, we are going to be so close to starting this process of pushing our application live so that our friends, family, and coworkers can give it a try. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to take care of a few quick miscellaneous details. So detail number 1, I don't want anyone to be able to access or directly access the files in the lib folder. So I only want my PHP files and scripts to be able to call the files that live in lib. But no one, for example, like in this tab, I visited, /lib/footer.php, that should not be possible. So let's just write a prompt and say, I don't want anyone to be able to access the PHP files in the lib folder. I only want my PHP scripts to be able to access or execute those files. To solve this, please create an .htaccess. So I'm not making this up. It needs to be exactly .htaccess file in the lib folder that accomplishes this. So go ahead and press enter. Let's see what that does for us. Okay, let's test it out. So if I refresh, this should not work. Perfect, forbidden. I don't have access to that resource, but back on my website, if I refresh, the footer still works. Cool. Next, let's log out and let's make sure that the sign up and login screens look good. So for example, like if you click on sign up or register, this screen, this needs a bit of styling help. So let's just write a prompt. I'll say in register.php, change things so that it uses the same head.php that index.php and createcritter.php uses. I don't want it to have the header though. So I want this screen to not have the header. I think it should just have the like sign up form field, and then I guess it could have the footer though. So let's say we've included head but not header. I'll say it can also use footer.php like index.php uses. And then use Tailwind to make the sign up form look nice. Let's go ahead and press enter and let that run. Okay, it looks like it finished. Let me refresh register.php. You will need to perform a hard refresh so you have the new CSS, so hold down the shift key. This looks great, but I didn't want the header bar. But this form area looks good, the footer looks good, so let me just fix that. I'll say perfect. But I don't want it to have header.php, just head.php, so that it loads our CSS, etc. Let's go ahead and press enter. Looks like mine finished. If I refresh, perfect. This is exactly what I would want on a register screen. Now let's go back and do the same thing for the login screen. So it looks like mine actually included a link right there, but you can always just go back, click login somewhere in your header. So now we need to have it improve this page. So I'll just write a prompt of similarly, login.php needs head.php and footer.php, and please use Tailwind to make the login form look nice. Let's go ahead and run that and see what it gives us. Looks like it's done. If I perform a hard refresh, cool, we have styling, we have no header, we have a footer. This looks great. There's only one other detail I want to take care of in this lesson, and it has to do with malicious users potentially trying to create a lot of critters at once. Let's log in and let me explain what I'm worried about. Well, actually, before we get to that issue that I am worried about, I just found another issue. So when I logged in, I'm realizing I'm logging in immediately. And remember, we tried to add a 4-second delay to the login process. Right, so when I log in, so notice I'll press login right now, and it just immediately goes in. So let me log out. We don't want that. I dug into the code, and it's embarrassing. So it's sleeping for 4 seconds if you didn't enter a username and password. And then it's sleeping for 4 seconds if you have an invalid username and password, but that's it. So if you type in a correct username and password, it's not sleeping. That's not what we want. We want it to sleep for 4 seconds before it even checks to see if it's a correct username and password or not. So let me update this. I'll say in login.php, please fix it so that it sleeps for 4 seconds before it even checks to see if the supplied username and password are correct. Currently, if you enter a correct username and password, it doesn't sleep at all. Let's go ahead and run that. Okay, looks like it's done. Let's keep those changes. And now let me test it out. So I'll try to log in. I'll fail the login first on purpose. So click login. Okay, it's making me wait the 4 seconds. Now I'll try to log in successfully. So I'll click login. Those are the correct values, but it's still making me wait the 4 seconds. Perfect. Okay, now let's get to the issue at hand. So when it comes to creating a critter, I'm worried about malicious users programmatically sending requests to the post request endpoint for this and trying to create like 100 critters at once, or 1,000 critters at once. Now I know we have the limit so that you can only create 30 critters, but imagine you didn't have that limit in place. And imagine a scenario where, yes, you can't create a critter if you have 0 credits, but imagine a malicious user had bought some credits and then they had 1 credit remaining. But then imagine if they tried to flood the server with 1,000 simultaneous requests for critters, and maybe a lot of those could get through before our database was updated to use one of those credits, in which case they could kind of cheat the system and use a lot of our replicate tokens or credits. Excuse me, not tokens, credits. So to fix this, and we're probably not going to come up with a 100% comprehensive solution, but I would at least ask the agent. I would describe what I'm worried about, and I would have them try to implement or at least make it more difficult for malicious users. So I would say, in createCritter.php, I'm worried about a situation where a malicious user has 1 credit remaining, but maliciously submits, 100 create critter post requests at the exact same time. I'm worried about a situation where our database doesn't update the credits count for that user fast enough, and so multiple replicate requests go through, and the malicious user is creating more than their allowed, credits wise, critters and replicate requests. Please implement a fix for what I'm worried about and explain your thought process, your thought process and how it works. Let's go ahead and press enter and let that run. Great, so it looks like my agent finished. Now it performed all sorts of edits on the file and it says that it's implementing a solution. It explains the approach. Yours might be a little bit different than mine, so I'm not going to bother reading this on camera, but what I will ask the agent as a follow-up question, I'll say, that sounds great. Do I need to alter the existing database tables manually right now? Or will the code you just implemented work without me needing to create or modify columns? Cool. It says the code I implemented will work without needing any database modifications. Now, obviously, in the real world, do I think that the solution it implemented is completely foolproof and 101% safe? No, probably not. So in the real world, when you're dealing with something that can be abused, like replicate credits, right, that's going to cost your company real money, depending on the scale of your application, you're going to want to hire a security team, or, when real money is at play, the stakes are very high, but we've at least implemented some basic best practices now. So let's give this a test. Let me go ahead and keep those changes, and let me just give it a test. So I'll try to create a new critter. A lime green sloth naps in a hammock. Cool. So it still works just like before. Let me make sure that didn't break our critters per day global limit. So in create critter, if you search for 30 or whatever you last set it to, like I'll set it to 3. And if I refresh and try to click create critter, cool, daily limit reached. Let's put that back up to 30 before we forget, because that would be rather annoying. Perfect. Okay, that is going to bring this lesson to a close. I like that sleeping sloth, by the way. In our next lesson, we're going to have the AI agent perform a basic security audit. And that way we will be one step closer to launching our app so that our friends, family, and coworkers can give it a try. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to perform our final step before we begin the process of launching our site live. We're going to ask our AI agent to perform a security audit on our entire code base. Now, obviously, this can't replace having an actual security expert go through your code, right? An experienced senior developer. But in this case, it can at least show you any glaring errors you have, right? Any obvious security holes that you have in your application. In other words, it's not a complete solution, but it should at least show you the basics. So here's what I would say for a prompt. I would say, please perform a security audit on my entire project. I'm getting ready to go live soon, and so please check all of my files for security holes, vulnerabilities, and common pitfalls. Make sure all database actions are using prepared statements. Make sure we're not open to cross-site scripting, so we're escaping any dynamic output. And make sure you look for any other glaring problems. Okay, let's go ahead and press enter and see what it finds or see what it gives us. Now, this, out of all the prompts that we've written, will take a decent amount of time, so let's be patient and see what it discovers. Okay, it looks like my agent finished. Now I realize out of all the prompts in this entire course, this is the one where we're probably going to have the least in common because it's so open-ended. It's such a large question for the agent to work on. So even though there might not be a ton of value in following along with me, I at least want to read through this from a bird's eye view and maybe share some of my thoughts so you can understand my thought process. So it's checking all my files. Good, because I asked for the entire project to be checked. So it says, perfect, I've completed my comprehensive security audit, and then it's going to actually work on fixes. So right away it says, excellent security practices are already in place. So all database queries are already using prepared statements. That just means that someone can't tamper with the incoming parameters to maybe tell our database to delete all records. So anytime you're using a SQL-based database, you always want to use prepared statements for everything. It looks like cross-site scripting protection is in place. Well, not quite. It says almost all output is properly escaped. I'll keep reading to see if it fixes maybe the few instances where this isn't the case. Security session, it says, looks good because we set our cookies to be HTTP only, same site strict, and use HTTPS when available. Authentication, it says it's properly implemented. Authorization looks good. Timing attack prevention. Password security looks good. We're hashing it. Webhook security looks good. Race conditions look good. Now, it did find a few issues. Let's see. Security issues found, need fixes. So cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Aha, so just a minute ago when I said hopefully it fixes it. So it did find several places where integers or booleans are echoed without escaping. So it looks like it found summon single critter and create critter. That's probably my problem from the prompt. I said to escape any dynamic values. I meant when you're outputting user input, but sometimes when you're writing a prompt, you just type it in really quick. So these values are coming from us as the developer, so they're safe. So truly, that I don't think that's even a problem in the first place. But let's see what it does. Let's test its fixes and make sure everything still works, obviously. But let's keep scrolling. File permission issue. Okay, so I guess this is when it creates the critter images folder if it doesn't already exist. It's just making sure that folder has the correct permissions. Awesome. That's a great fix to put in place. Let's see, missing input validation in single critter. The action post parameter should be validated against a whitelist. Okay, and then it's going to actually implement those fixes. It's checking the home page for similar issues. Looks like it's complete. So we're now safe from SQL injection, password security. It's looking good. Session security, timing attacks, authentication, authorization, race conditions, webhook. Interesting that it says we have CSRF protection because unless it implemented that, we did not implement that. So I'll just let you know, this is why I set on our cookies, I set same site to strict. With same site set to strict, as long as your users are using a somewhat modern browser, you don't need to worry about cross-site request forgery attacks. If you're not using same site strict, then you do need to implement some sort of CSRF token system. So I'm curious if it did that or if it's just recognizing that because I set same site strict, I don't need to worry about that. But let's keep scrolling. Input validation is looking good, it says. So these are the fixes it implemented. So it's escaping my integer output. Now, hopefully this didn't break anything. So now that it did these things, I need to go make sure that create critter and single critter, that all of those features still work. But it looks like it escaped some numbers, some integers. I don't think those were even threats in the first place because they were coming from our developer supplied values and code. But let's see. Okay, this looks good. It fixed the file permissions. So it is offering me a few suggestions. It's saying maybe implement rate limiting to prevent brute force attacks. We already talked about that. Ultimately, to get perfect security, you're going on in terms of just your authentication and login system, you're either going to need to hire a specialist or the better option on a budget, just use something like Google Auth for your login system. But for an application like ours, which isn't like a banking application, I think our login system is good enough. It's giving us a few other optional suggestions. We could start logging our errors, so on and so forth. You could make sure that you're trusting the files coming from Replicate, but I do. So those were optional, but it says ready for production. Now, the moment of truth. let's actually look at the changes that it gave us and make sure that those files still work. So first of all, it looks like it modified index.php. Let's see what it did in that file. Looks like it's just escaping some numbers. Let me refresh my home page. Yep, it still works. It also adjusted single critter.php. So let me click on a single critter. This still looks good. Let me make sure I can favorite it. Yep. Can I unfavorite it? Yep. Can I archive it? Yep. I can unarchive it. I can try to begin a remix. Yep. Looks good. I can try these quick filters. Yep. Looks good. All my lime green. Taking naps in a hammock at the pumpkin patch. Cool. And then let's go back and make sure that the clone or same recipe feature is working. So this hamster, I know it should have a few clones. Perfect. It also modified my header, which is obviously working, right? These links up here still look good. And it also modified my create critter. So let me just try to create a critter really quick. This one looks good. A black cat plays tennis at the mall. Let's see what that spins up. Aha, so that did not work. I don't see the new image, and notice there's like a missing image in the grid of 8. So we have a problem. Right now I can explain my thought process. My first thought is, did the security audit make a mistake or mess up create critter, or is there some sort of problem going on with replicate? To answer that question, first of all, we do need to implement some sort of fail check in our create critters so that if the replicate servers are failing for some reason, we don't use up a user's credit and we don't even add the row in the database to create, the missing image problem. But perhaps there isn't a problem with replicate, and maybe the agent added a problem in create critter. So let me just see what the agent did inside of create critter. Let me scroll through here and look for the changes. So it changed the permissions on the critter images folder. What else did it do? That's just the critter limit message. What else? So it looks like it did try to change how these integers are being displayed. That shouldn't be a problem. If I look in the database, the very bottom critter row, you can see it has a missing value for image. These values look perfectly normal for the IDs for nouns and adjectives and verbs. Let's see, did it do anything else in this file? No, it doesn't look like it did. So at this point, I would probably say everything looks great except after your changes, now create critter.php isn't successfully getting an image from replicate. Is it possible your latest changes broke this feature? Or maybe replicate is down at the moment, or the requests are failing for some reason? In addition to seeing if your latest changes broke this feature, can you also add a fail check to create critter in terms of if the replicate request doesn't give us a successful response and image that we can ultimately store in the image column of our database, then don't even add a new database row at all for the critter. Now you could go deeper than that. You could say, and don't subtract a credit from the user, and you could say like show a message to the user on the home page saying critter attempt failed, try again later. I mean, you could take this as deep as you want, but in this video, let me just go ahead and at least try this to make sure that it's working. Well, that's funny. It looks like it's going to do that for us. It's going to handle credit refunds if the request fails. That's actually good. I mean, we needed to do that anyways if we're actually going to be taking real money from people. You absolutely need to account for the request failing and not taking a credit away. So maybe replicate is down at the moment, or maybe I ran out of credits. I don't think so. I should still have some credits left. But let's go ahead and see what it comes up with. Cool. So it looks like it finished and it implemented a fail check. Let me go test it again. Let me delete that old missing one in the database because the missing grid will make it obvious if it worked or failed. So refresh your critters table. This very bottom one, you can see it has no image value in that image column. I would just right click on its far left label, delete record, Click Write Changes. So now when you refresh, the grid is okay. But let me try to create a new critter. Okay, so the crochet kangaroo, let's click Create Critter. Ah, very interesting. Failed to generate critter image. Replicate API returned HTTP 500. Aha, so in a new browser tab, I just tried to visit replicate.com, and there you have it. I mean, that would explain why we can't create any new critters. Their website is entirely down. Why? I'm not sure. You will definitely not be running into this, right, when you watch this video lesson. As I'm watching this today, or recording this today, I should say, I do know that it just got announced the previous night that Replicate will be joining Cloudflare. So it's a little bit ironic that the very next morning their entire website is down and we're seeing this funny Cloudflare error message. A little bit of developer irony there. So I'm just going to wait maybe 10 or 20 minutes and see if they get their services back online. So then we can test our Create Critter functionality. This has nothing to do with educational value or this course, but just wanted to document this moment in internet history for you. I just tried to visit twitter.com or x.com. It has the exact same Cloudflare error. And now here's a bit of educational value. This is why you absolutely need to make sure that your application is gracefully handling errors like this. Like if a service is down, we need to account for that. Essentially, anything that can fail, you need to make sure your code handles the situation for when it indeed eventually fails. So this was actually the perfect time for us to run into this issue, and tell it to add a fail check to the replicate request before we go live. Okay, so just a minute or two forward in the future, and now Cloudflare is working, so I can visit Twitter or x.com, I can visit replicate.com. So now we should be able to create this kangaroo critter. This crochet kangaroo. So I have 199 credits. Let me click Create Critter. Cool, there it is. It took away 1 credit. Beautiful. More importantly, back to the task at hand, that was the final file that the security audit had modified, and everything is working great, and we actually improved it because now it handles instances where the replicate request fails. We are in really good shape at this point. Now, in our next lesson, let's make sure that our database structure works when we push it live. So we won't actually go live in the very next lesson, but what we can do is just create a second site, a brand new empty site in local WP, and practice migrating or deploying or essentially cloning or copying this site, but make sure that when you start in a fresh environment with maybe a fresh database, that everything works as we would expect. Once we do that, then we can rest easy knowing that our files are resilient and we can actually push them up to a real server with a real address that you can send to your friends and family. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello everyone. We're not going live in this video, but we are going to practice going live. Let me explain. So up until now, we just have our one project in local WP. And before I actually worry about sending all my files to a web host and, having it be live up on the web, I like to make sure that I catch any really obvious or common problems. Like, does our application automatically create all of the database tables that it needs to? Does it seed the correct rows in the database so that it functions right out of the box when you're starting with an empty canvas? Right? And this is also a great chance for you and I to practice making sure that we're moving over all the files, that we move over our env file with its values in the env loader. It's just sort of a practice run or a dry run of what we'll do in our next lesson, which is actually move these files and actually go live with them. So here's what I recommend. In local WP, it's falling off the edge of my screen recording, but in the bottom left corner, you'll see a plus symbol to create a new site or add a local site. Just do that right now. So create a new site, move forward with that. Let's name it like Our App Test, or you could call it like Practice Run or something like that. But you get the idea. Go ahead and get that created. Let's click Custom Values. Choose the newest version of PHP that doesn't have a download arrow next to it. For web server, we definitely want to pick Apache, not Nginx, just because that's what most affordable basic web hosts will use, and it's also what our application uses. So just a quick note, remember back in our lib folder, we had it add this htaccess file. That won't do anything with an Nginx server, but with with an Apache server, this htaccess file can do its job. So let's just choose Apache as our web server. Let's choose MySQL as our database system and click continue. Just to be clear, we're not actually using MySQL. We're using SQLite. This is just for our dev environment. You can just give these any values of like admin, click add site and move forward. Cool. So that should take maybe less than a minute or two to get that set up, and then I'll show you what to do next. You might need to enter your computer's user account password, but once you do that, it should go through. So you now see that I have our app test. I can visit it in a new browser tab. Now, it's currently a WordPress website, but to fix that, all we need to do is go into local WP, click on site folder for this brand new site, go into app, go into public, and just delete everything in this folder. So just press Control or Command A to select everything. You can right click and delete or use your keyboard, but just delete everything in that public folder. Now, obviously, when I refresh, I'm going to see an error message or just an empty, index of screen. And now let's just practice copying over our files. So leave this Explorer directory open. That's the new site's public folder. But then just open up your folder for your real app that we've been building this entire course together. So open up site folder, go into app, go into public, and just move over or copy over all of your files. So just select everything. Don't cut and paste them, copy and paste them, or make sure you're cloning or copying them over. We don't want to lose them from this good folder. But you can see I just cloned or duplicated all those files into this folder. Now we do want to make a few key adjustments. So we're starting fresh. So go into Critter Images and definitely just delete everything in this folder except for index.php. And just to be clear, if you wanted to keep these images, you absolutely could. I mean, this entire folder is only not even 3 megabytes. It's 2.4 megabytes. So you could keep that, and you could move over your entire current database. But a lot of times you'll want a completely separate set of data from your dev copy to your live production copy. So I'm just going to delete all these images except for index.php. So I'll unselect it, but delete all those images. Now, if we went back and refreshed in the browser, I'm sure we would see an error because none of our environment variables are ready. Oh, well, you can see we don't. I guess we don't need those environment variables for just viewing, the guest homepage. But if we tried to actually interact with replicate or actually even just create our ticket system because that uses an env value, just any feature that uses anything stored in our environment variables, that would fail miserably. So let me show you how we can move those over as well. Back in our original site that we've been building together in site folder, in app, but not in public, just in app, you want to move over env loader and the invisible hidden system file called .env. Let's start with env loader. So this is the new site that I'm trying to get up and running. So yes, up a folder where you can actually see the public folder, and there's our empty database, our new database that PHP created. I would just copy and clone env loader. And now let me show you how I would move over the .env file because you can't even see it. What I would do is in the good copy of our site that already exists, that we've been building, I would go up a folder and I would open the entirety of app in your VS Code. Right, so that's this VS Code. That will show you your .env hidden file. And I would literally just select everything in the entire file, copy it into your clipboard. Then all you need to do is open up the entire app folder on the new copy of the site, the empty site. So not the public folder, but if you go back up a folder, open up app with VS Code. Here it is. And now you can see there's env loader, but there's no .env. So just right click, create a brand new .env file, paste in your clipboard, save it. So now those features can actually work. And now I would actually go back and test my application. So let me try to sign up for a new account because this doesn't have the Brad account or the Meows a lot or Barks a lot accounts. It's a completely fresh copy. So I'll click sign up. Okay, let me actually submit that form. Aha, so this is exactly why we're going through this practice run. We just found our first problem. And the idea is that I would much rather see this problem and fix it when it's still just a private website on my personal sandbox computer than to see this error for the first time once we deploy this up onto the live web. That's why we're going through this test run. So let's look at this error. Unable to prepare statement, no such table critters. Aha. So you might not have this exact same problem as I do, but essentially the home page is trying to load or look for any critters for the current user, but that table doesn't even exist yet because remember, we create that table if it doesn't exist in createcritter.php, not index.php. So on this brand new fresh copy of the site, no one has ever even visited createcritter yet. So what I would do is just copy this entire message into my clipboard, and then back in VS Code, this is the copy that we've been building throughout the entire course together. I would just write a prompt with the following. I would say, I just tried running my app with a completely fresh database, and I ran into a problem where when you visit the home page while logged in, it's trying to query for critters, but the critters table doesn't exist yet because until someone visits createcritter.php, there won't be a critters table yet. Can you please move the code in createcritter.php that creates the database table if it doesn't exist yet to live in index.php without causing any problems in createcritter.php? Here is the error message I got in the browser, and then just paste it in, hit enter. Okay, it looks like my agent finished. So now to test that, I would just refresh my home page. I haven't had any coffee this morning yet. Obviously, that doesn't fix it because this is our new test copy. So the agent just fixed is the create critter and index of our good working copy. So obviously, we need to move those two modified files. Let me keep those changes. But we need to move over to our new copy site. So here's my new site. Here's my existing good site that we're working on. So I would just go into app and public in this new folder as well and just copy over index and create critter. So there's index, there's create critter. I would just copy those over, replace them. Yes, overwrite and replace. And now if I refresh the home page, perfect, we don't have a problem. Now let me show you how I would double test that or just check it completely fresh again. I'd log out and I would wipe the entire database. So I'll need to create my Brad user again. But to test that, so now in the new copy site, the test run site, I would just go into the app folder and just delete this database file, app.sqlite. Just delete that. So now, back in the browser, you could try to log in, but it's not going to work. The database just got wiped. So let's sign up for a brand new Brad user again. So I'll actually click sign up. Okay, cool. There's no problem, 0 errors. I have my brand new account. Before I can create a critter, I would need to have credits. I currently have 0 credits, right? So I click create critter, it says, nope, you have 0 credits. Now to actually get credits into my account, we could try the paddle system, but we'll do that in the next lesson because I don't want to have to spin up the ngrok site for this local domain. I just feel like that's going to add a lot of complexity. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but we're going to need to change that webhook anyways in our next lesson. Remember in paddle, it will send a webhook request to our, and then we used ngrok. Well, instead of paddle sending the request to ngrok, we'll need it to send it to whatever our actual real .com domain is going to be. We can worry about that in the next lesson. I guess what I'm trying to let you know is to test this locally, I would just go into the database and give yourself like 5 credits. So if you open up your DB browser for SQLite, you just need to open up your new copy test database file. So here it is for me, it's this file. So I would just drag that on top of DB browser for SQLite. No, I don't want to import it. I just want to open it up. So I'll click OK. You'll know it's the right one. If you go to critters, it should be completely empty. But I would just go into the users table and there's my Brad user. I would just give myself, like maybe 5 credits, click apply. You do need to click write changes. And now when I refresh, cool, I have my 5 credits. Let me try creating a critter really quick. A purple penguin, it failed. Let me check replicate. Aha, the dreaded Cloudflare error message again. Aha, and even Twitter or x.com is down. Okay, off camera, I waited until the Cloudflare outage was over, replicates back up. So let me try to create that purple penguin again. Perfect. It went through. It took away 1 credit. This is looking great. This means this new copy of our website and database, it works perfectly. So now we've ironed out that potential problem for the next lesson when we want to push our files up to a real server. Now, if for some reason you didn't want to start with a clean slate and you actually wanted to move over your database from your existing local site, you could do that. It's as simple as just moving over the critter images. And in your app folder, your database is probably like under 50 kilobytes. So that would be very easy to do. But if you wanted to do that, make sure that your user accounts are using actually secure passwords, right? Because it's okay if your password is QWERTY on your local account. But once you push this up to the real web, you wouldn't want an easy to guess password on any of your user accounts. Cool, but that is going to bring this lesson to a close. And at this point, just to be clear, so you don't confuse your different files, I would probably go ahead and in local WP, just stop your test or your dry run copy. Just stop that website. You don't need that any longer. And then also close down any duplicate copies of VS Code. Right, in this case, this test website is done. So this is back to the copy that we've been building together. And in our next lesson, we'll learn how to deploy this. Let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you in that next lesson.